What is the hardest and most favorite thing about homeschooling for you? The hardest thing for me was the early years, the foundation, when you're doing a lot of work and it's like building a building. You're doing all this work, you don't see the fruit, and you're exhausted. And at the end of the day, you sometimes think, what do I have to show for this? But over time, it gets easier. And my favorite thing is hands down the time that I get to spend with my kids.
Welcome to Our Life Homeschooling. My name is Sherry, Christian, wife to my high school sweetheart Nelson, and thankful mom to 10 incredible kids. I'm the author of the blog and YouTube channel Our Life Homeschooling, where I share homeschooling encouragement for everyday moms. I believe that motherhood is ministry, and homeschooling is simply an extension of parenting. My passion is to cheer on other moms who are at home doing the most important work of all, raising the next generation for the glory of God.
Hi everyone, it's Sherry. I'm doing a Q&A. I sent a question over to Instagram and to YouTube, just asking people for homeschooling questions. Initially, I had some questions that people have asked me on YouTube that I kind of wanted to address just because it's harder to write out give a good answer. It's easier to just talk about it. And so I picked some of those, and that was what I was going to start with. But I got an overwhelming number of questions over on YouTube and on Instagram. So I'm not going to be able to get to all of these. I'm going to do my best to go through them, but this is definitely something I will probably do again since I got so many questions. If I don't get to your question, I am going to try to do another one of these, and I'll keep track of those and try to go through it then. So stay tuned for that if your question doesn't get answered. And also, I have done a lot of videos on some of the questions that were asked. So questions about like screen time, or how do you teach multiple kids? How do you teach with an infant? How do you keep your house clean? I've done videos like this. If you just search on my YouTube channel, you'll find some of them. So you can also be looking for some of them on there if you haven't watched them. Okay, so I have not done something like this in a long time. I think I did a Q&A, I don't know, maybe even a year ago. I'm not the best at just talking off the cuff. I'm a thinker, but I'm going to do my best to just keep going and answering these questions. I'm going to start on Instagram. So the first question is, when do you start grammar, and what about spelling? I'm a former teacher as well with our oldest, and spelling is just a struggle. He's a great reader, but for some reason, all that I've tried to help him to be a better speller, it just doesn't seem to be clicking. So as far as grammar, we start doing formal grammar lessons in 4th grade or when I think that a child is ready. So at this age, they're pretty independent with reading, writing, they're doing copy work, they can do narration, and we start with Abeka grammar. I start with, I think it's language 3 is the first one I start with, and then the next one I do is language A, language B, language C. And this is very similar to how I do a lot of things. I'm very relaxed about it. I have the kids do, I think, 1 page a day for younger kids, maybe 2 pages a day for older kids. I don't plan to get through that workbook in a year. We just do a little bit every day. It's on their checklist, and when they get to that day and that part on their checklist, they just do a day. So that's pretty much where we are with grammar. The reason I picked Abeka, there was nothing special about it other than the fact that I had it as a child. It's the only curriculum I use from Abeka is for our language lessons, our grammar. I just think it's simple, and I was familiar with it. So sometimes in homeschooling, it's really worth it to use something that's familiar to you, because that's just one less thing that you have to adjust to, one less thing you have to learn. The second part of this question was on spelling, and this is something that I have wanted to talk about, so I was glad this question came up. I don't think it's a good use of time to do spelling the way that we were taught growing up in school, where you write out all these words and then the second day you put them in a sentence. I like spelling to be taught in the context of when you're using that word. So primarily for us, we learn spelling through copy work. And the second way that I teach spelling is to teach my kids patterns and rules. And I have these, at least I have half of the ones that we use in the Simple Morning Time notebook for this year. I'm planning to put the second half of the rules in next year's notebook, but we do copy work. The kids do copy work every day. And then I am always going through these spelling patterns and rules because I just think this is a better way to understand spelling, and especially when you're spelling words in their context. And if I had a child that was like, I felt like this was a major issue, maybe I would look further into a spelling curriculum. It's just not ever been a major issue for us. So this has been working for us over, for several years. And when I say copy work, I'm not looking for spelling progress in copy work in like a week or a month or even a year. I've seen the benefits of using copy work over many years. It's something my kids do every day. It's a habit. If your kids do it, I think it's a super tool, and they just pick up on spelling and many other things as well. Okay, the next question is picking a math curriculum. This I do think is kind of important because I'm a big believer in sticking with the same math curriculum if possible. So when I was looking at a math curriculum at the beginning, I just asked all of my homeschool mom friends that were ahead of me. I looked at what they had, and it was a really tough decision. But we went with Right Start at first. We did switch to Singapore, but we've been with Singapore for a long time since then. And I did a video on this kind of explaining a little more. If you look up practical tips or how I teach math on my channel, that kind of goes into it a little bit more. So we like Singapore. When you stick with the same curriculum for math, it trickles down to the rest of your kids. So it's just a huge time saver. The next question. This year I'm teaching 4 kids. How do you manage who gets taught first or who gets taught together? So in the earlier years of homeschooling our kids, it was a juggle. There was no easy way around it. You get them all to the table. It helps to keep them all in one spot, but you work with one, and sometimes kids have to wait. And I think this is harder when they're all younger, but it gets easier as they get older. And I will also say that I always try to spend a little bit of time with my younger kids so that they can just kind of get in that play mood and start having ideas. And then after they get a little bit of time with me, then sometimes, not always, but sometimes they'll wander off and go do other things, and that will give me time with the next child. What is the hardest and most favorite thing about homeschooling for you? The hardest thing for me was the early years, the foundation, when you're doing a lot of work, and it's like building a building. You're doing all this work, you don't see the fruit, and you're exhausted. And at the end of the day, you sometimes think, what do I have to show for this? But over time, it gets easier. And my favorite thing is hands down the time that I get to spend with my kids. I especially love this in the older years when they're getting into high school, because this is the time when you really want their hearts. And I start caring less and less about curriculum and more about my relationship with them. So getting this time with them is the best part. I'm so glad I'm not missing out on this. Okay, what do you do when you feel overwhelmed? I have felt overwhelmed many times in homeschooling, and more typically I was overwhelmed when my kids were younger. It was just a lot. The learning curve of just having kids home all day, and then on top of it, homeschooling them. It was just such a big change for me. So I was overwhelmed. And at the same time I was overwhelmed, it was all wonderful and good. And my kids were learning so much, and I loved the lifestyle. So like someone has said, it's the hardest job you'll ever love. That's the perfect description. When I'm overwhelmed in general, I just cry out to the Lord. I spend time alone with God in prayer and in His Word. And intimacy with the Lord is the source of your strength. That's been the source of my strength. That's where so many times along the way we've had problems that we've come to that I didn't know the answer. I didn't know how to move forward. Or my husband, together we couldn't come up with an answer. And yet the Lord has been faithful to us. So when I'm overwhelmed, I usually will find a way to put the kids for a quiet time, a nap time, get some time by myself, spend some time in God's Word, in prayer, and then just spending time doing something I enjoy. Sometimes you just need a break, taking a nap or doing something for fun. Okay, I'm gonna move to the YouTube questions that I have here. Okay, how do you homeschool multiple kids? This is something I talk about a lot. It's not something that just happens to you all at once. We started with one child, and one child at that time felt very overwhelming. And then we got into a rhythm. We found a new normal, and then we had another child. And, it just slowly happened one at a time. And we started out homeschooling one child. And that was a big jump for me, for all of us. And then slowly we added a second. So it's not easy homeschooling multiple children, but if you can move them towards being independent as soon as they can read and write, that has been the ticket for us. And at the beginning, I thought that this was putting us behind. I thought that it wasn't as good of a way to learn, but what I learned was that it was better. Our kids have taken ownership of their work. In fact, sometimes when we're doing morning time, they've said to me, I have stuff I want to get done, so can we finish up? Because I have stuff I want to get done. They're motivated to do the things that they have set out to do. So at the beginning of the year, we get together and we make up each of their checklists. They help me, and we decide there's certain things that I want them to do or I have required, and then they will put on there some things that they want to do, and I give them some choices, and they help put that together. This is their work, and they've taken ownership of it. So if you can move them toward independence, that really helps. But in the beginning, when they're all little, it can be a lot. Okay, another question here is about science. What do you teach for science in the middle and high school years? Or what, I've had a couple questions. What do you teach for science? Science is the one thing that I go a little bit off the map because I don't know why, but yeah, for the most part, we've used Apologia. So when my kids were all little, it was a lot simpler. We did everything together. Our homeschool days seemed a lot easier because we just did everything together. So I went through Apologia with my kids, and we did astronomy, we did flying creatures, swimming creatures, and that was really fun, and that worked at the time. As our kids got older, now our high schoolers mostly just our high schoolers go to a drop-off co-op where they get classes for credit there. And I think most of the classes, the science classes they've taken have still been Apologia. Not all of them, but I think for the most part. So they're doing those. And what happens when you don't have all little kids, again, it kind of breaks everything up, whether or not you want it to. Like, you can try to keep it all, like your younger kids all doing the same thing. But for example, my 12-year-old asked me if she could do human anatomy from Apologia this year on her own. Well, I knew that wasn't a good fit for everyone, just with the dynamics that we have this year. But she really wanted to do it. And so I said yes, because if she wants to do it, then she's going to really pay attention and she's going to learn. So it's worth it. And then our 10-year-old, he asked if he could do flying creatures because he just thinks that was something he was interested in, and we hadn't done it in a while. So I said yes to him. So that left me with my 8 and 6-year-old now. And with them, I've been doing the Burgess Bird Book with the Peterson Field Guide coloring book. If you've seen some of the recent videos, that's what we've been working on with them. So science has been a little bit more all over the place, even though I would say we pretty much do use Apologia. Sometimes, I think last year, I didn't do Apologia at all. We did just some Ambleside books, and we watched some DIY science videos, and the kids loved it. I'm just a little bit more laid back with science. Maybe it's just my personal preference. Do you follow Charlotte Mason Ambleside Online curriculum? I started out loving Ambleside Online. This is what I did completely for everyone. And in fact, with my oldest, I followed Ambleside Online most of the way through. I did almost everything. It was too much. But I still love a lot of Ambleside Online, and I do a lot of it. However, with our wide range of ages and with how many kids we have, I've been very loose with it. What I've done is just pick the books that I love the best, and those are the ones that we include. So I have a post on the blog, How We Make Ambleside Online Work for Our Large Family, and I share on there the books that are like our favorite, the ones that I still use. So yes, we do kind of, in the high school years, I definitely move more towards an interest-led type of learning, or delight-directed, whatever you want to call it, and less of an Ambleside Online or Charlotte Mason curriculum. Time efficiency with boys. They seem to take so long most days. Okay, boys are different. And I think one big thing is realizing as moms that our boys are different from us. Boys do not like to sit as long. They don't like to talk. They are completely physical. They want to be moving around. They want action. So with boys, it's really helped me to give them lots of breaks, lots of outside time. And this just helps them to be able to sit and focus a little bit more. And I think too, just remembering that they are built differently than us, and not having the same expectation. We had 2 boys first and then a girl. Our 2 boys had no interest in coloring. We didn't have crayons or coloring in our house until we had our daughter. They had no interest. Like, I would hand it to them, they would scribble. They just, sitting and doing work just does not come naturally to boys, which I think is a great part of homeschooling, that we can tailor things to their actual needs. They need a lot of time running around, doing physical things. So if you can fit that into your day, and of course then there is a time where they have to sit down and do some schoolwork, but I think just making those adjustments for them really helps. Okay, this question. I would like to ask how rigorous you are with your high schoolers. I'm not there yet, but kind of planning it ahead of time. What do you require of them as far as grammar, etc.? And have you ever tried teaching textbooks? Any input? I have not used teaching textbooks, but I do know a lot of people that do and love it. It's great if you want to do some higher level subjects at home, because it just presents it in a way that's just really easy for them to pick up on. But I have not used it. How rigorous am I with my high schoolers? This is a great question, because I started out being very academic, and I was that way with our oldest. I came from a public school teaching background, so I wanted to make sure that we were meeting all those objectives. I wanted to have all of our boxes crossed off. I wanted to be ahead of everything. And I quickly realized from teaching our son that he shot off in some areas and did so well. And then in other areas, he needed help, and we would stop and take a little bit more time. And I quickly realized that was just not working. But I was very academic focused. And it's not that I have dropped that off or left it completely. I would say in the elementary years, I want them to have the foundations of reading, writing, and math. I want them to have a rich curriculum of art and music, geography, all those peripheral subjects as well. But once they get into the high school years, this completely changed for me with our son, because I started seeing the countdown clock of how much time we had left before he was finished and before he was leaving our home. And relationships became the number one driving motivator in our homeschool. I started caring less and less about the curriculum, more and more about the atmosphere in our home, our time, just family movie nights, or spending time one-on-one whenever we could get it in. So in the high school years, we make sure that we're getting the credits that are required by law, and I give my kids a lot of free time to pursue their interests as much as possible. So I would say I'm not very rigorous in the high school years, because our time with them is winding down, and my relationship with them is something that I want to be a priority. So I am sorry I was not able to get to more questions, but I am keeping some of these questions and will try to get to them in the next episode, which is going to be 2 weeks from now. So if I didn't answer your question, wait and stay tuned for that. You can also go ahead and just do a search on my YouTube channel if you haven't yet, because a lot of these things I have answered in some other tutorial videos maybe a year or 2 ago. I started off doing a lot of tutorial style videos and have moved more towards day in the life videos, but you can find a lot of those. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.